Wartales is a tactics-style, turn-based strategy RPG with survival elements set in a sprawling, low-fantasy medieval open world. That is one long descriptor for a single game, I must say, though it does seamlessly blend all of these various genres and elements together into a single great package where I did lose many hours of my time wandering between the various counties and portions of the game, fighting roving packs of bandits and vicious wild animals, bits and pieces of armies, as well as exploring ancient tombs for treasure and knowledge. The game did officially hit version 1.0 on the 12th, and I did previously play a prior version of it in early access a long time ago, so I dove in as everything about the game did speak to me on a level. Wartales is a title from Shiro Games. They have a few strategy tiles under their belts and are the team working on the early access 4x strategy Dune Spice Wars, which so far has mostly positive reviews on Steam. Their strategy games are also all well received, and it's obvious that they do know what they are doing within this genre space. Wartales does start you off with creating an adventuring party of 4 companions with basic character creation tools such as male or female, hairstyles, facial hair if it's applicable, hair color, very basic stuff here. It's serviceable for what the game is and what the game needs. Furthermore, you do choose their starting weapons and essentially their starting class here in this moment as well. Now, you do pick up other companions for your party along the way by visiting various inns and different townships across the land. You can recruit new members to your party, and so far I have not encountered a party limit, and that is including human companions as well as combat beasts and ponies used to trek most of my gear around with the party. Now, the character classes are based solely around the weapons that they can wield. And at levels 5 and level 10, they also gain a few further specializations into those classes to be a little bit more unique from one another. Starting off, you have archers, who obviously wield a bow, who can kind of double down onto using bows and weapons, or they can also go Beastmaster and control tamed beasts on the battlefield. Then you have your brute, who uses blunt weapons such as maces, one-handed maces with shields to be a little bit tanky, or two-handed maces, which are great crowd control options. You have the ranger, who is your classic rogue, who deals with daggers, various throwing weapons, and applying poisons to enemies. You do also have spearmen, who use, well, you guessed it, spear-like weapons, spears. They do excel at controlling enemy placement and work great alongside your other melee units. Then you do also have swordsmen and warriors, and they are exactly like brutes. However, swordsmen will use either a one-handed sword and a shield, or a two-handed sword, or warriors will use a one-handed axe and a shield, or a two-handed axe. Just really depends on if you want to go with medium armor for more damage perhaps, or heavy armor and a shield, or heavy armor and a two-handed weapon. Just kind of build variety here. Now, much like I said, I haven't really met a party cap size. I'm sitting at about 22, and that is including the tame beasts, which, first and foremost, you do have to manage your party. So based on character traits, party composition, there are various needs that do have to be met. Your human companions will have to be paid their wages, which is every few days whenever you rest. You can forego paying them on time, which will lower the party's overall happiness, and there are bonuses for managing that happiness at a high level, and at low levels, people will leave the party. Aside from that, some companions can dislike each other and have certain negative bonuses, and if they like each other, there will be positive bonuses. You do need to feed them as well. Some can develop an alcoholism trait, so you'll need to have extra alcohol at the nightly meal. Extra meat if a companion is cursed with the plague, or extra meat if you have different animal companions. Now, this is all managed by feeding them food around the campfire at your campsite, and furthermore, You can have larger meals, which will provide a better food benefit across the board and provide both meats and alcohol and other substance as well as other bonuses. On top of this, the campsite is very useful. You can have different tool stations set up. You can have drying racks for drying out meat. You have a strategy table for your captain to work at or lieutenant of your party to give your party special little bonuses based on the level of it. Your tinkerer's bench, which allows you to break down and dismantle weapons for raw materials that you scrounge up in battle. A hitching post for your ponies, which can increase their carrying weight, gurneys to help heal injuries, multiple things that can be upgraded around your campsite, as well as useful for your companions' professions, which are also super important. There are multiple professions in the game, ranging from alchemist to scholar. You have your basic ones, such as blacksmith or miner or woodcutter. And various times you'll come across spots where you can fish, and you'll need someone who is a fisherman to do this. A lot of these will have mini games involved. Fishing will always have a mini game, same as woodcutting if you're at a chopping block within a camp or a place like that. Blacksmithing typically will always have a mini game as well. Sometimes mining will, if you're in a cave location or something needs to be broken down, your miner will take care of it. While other times things like the cook will just need the ingredients for the recipe to be completed, or the alchemist will just need the stuff to be completed. In further updates, something might be added for those professions as well, but currently there is not. All of these professions are very important to your party. It allows you to create better upgraded gear and weapons as you progress through the levels with the materials you find, which is very important for survivability. Now, aside from this sort of basic party stuff, the survival aspect of the game, which is the professions, the feeding, the fatigue, which makes you stop and camp, the pay, all that sort of things. The normal gameplay loop can be a little long and boring at times because you're going to be scrounging the open world for ore, wood, lumber, fishing spots, stuff like that. If you need it to craft items, craft better armor, cook better meals. Aside from this, though the game is very, very in-depth. You can take up missions which are execution missions where you'll need to hunt down groups of bandits and engage them in combat. You'll need to assassinate certain individuals through combat. You can go exploring tombs, which are kind of a neat idea, which is more along the lines of a point-and-click adventure game with combat thrown throughout, as well as little traps that can affect your party members negatively if you're not careful and solving the puzzles. The combat, though, is where the game does really shine. Everything else is just really good filler around it. Now, the game takes place across multiple different regions, and they do have a tensions meter that you do want to fill up. Each region will have 4 major quests to complete before you want to move on to the next region, because completing this will give you a bonus that you can purchase from the local blacksmith to increase the capabilities of repairing your armor at the blacksmith, or just your raw materials if you're repairing it yourself after battle or at camp. Once you complete this, usually you'll come to a head where 2 sides of the warring factions will come together, and you'll choose who you want to help based on who you helped more than the other during the questing. Aside from these main quests, you have a bounties guild you can take missions and contracts from to just kind of gain a little bit more gold, gain a little bit more XP, find new locations hidden on the map, as well as some boss enemies, which are really unique encounters for a game such as this, where it's such a low fantasy RPG, and you'll really need to think tactically for those. But like I said, the combat is where this game really shines, and everything is filler. It starts off like a typical tactics game. You arrange your troops where you want them to start, based upon what you can see from the enemy, and then, well, you go. You have a meter at the bottom of the screen, which lets you know who is going where and in what order, and then you go. Each unit can move, have a basic attack, as well as different skills they can utilize based on your team's current amount of valor points. Valor points can be earned through multiple ways, such as engaging in combat, being in combat with an enemy, ending combat near an enemy, killing an enemy unit, hitting multiple enemy units with an attack, ending combat near an allied unit while not engaged with another enemy. There's just a ton of options here, and trying to micromanage the system is a quick way and is the best way to make sure that your entire party will make it out of each combat situation alive, because mismanaged valor points can result in you not being able to use first aid, which requires a valor point on an ally who is dying and needs that, which did happen to a few of my units. Also realizing that a unit cannot apply first aid to itself either. That also killed one. Now, when all of the game's systems come together, it can be a little bit daunting. You're managing a party of anywhere from 4 to who knows what the cap is. I have not hit the cap, and I actually haven't found definitive proof of what the cap is, because depending upon the amount of companions you have in your party, that's the amount of enemies that are present in battles. You know, how large bosses scale to the parties themselves as well. So it can be something that's a little daunting at times. You have to feed them, you have to pay them, you have to manage all of their gear, you have to craft all of their gear, you have to repair it, you have to make sure no one's unhappy with others. It's expensive to stay at an inn in town for a free meal. It's expensive to go to a blacksmith to repair all your gear. It can be a little bit daunting. On top of that, the mass amount of enemies can be daunting if you're not used to a tactics game, but the game does have quite a few accessibility options here. If you so choose, you can turn down most of the survival aspects of the game to where they don't really matter. You don't have to worry about your fatigue system, you don't have to worry about the feeding your party, the food, the hunger, the wages, the relationships with one another. You don't really have to worry about that at a point, or you can turn it up to have to deal more with that aspect if you would like. Same goes with the combat. You can turn it down to make enemy encounters smaller and easier overall, or you can turn that up and make it more difficult overall. There's even an option to remove enemies from appearing on the turn gauge, so you don't know which enemy is going when, which, to be fair, is something that I do use and abuse when deciding on what party member is going to go where to try to minimize team casualties and come up with a strategy to best beat each scenario. So you really can go above and beyond to make the game as hard as possible for yourself, even including with Iron Man saves, where the game will just save for you and, well, the outcome is your outcome. Visually, the game looks good. It's nothing really to write home about, but it does exactly what it needs to. It's kind of a top-down from the angle isometric style view. You can rotate around different scenes in the game, such as inns or locations in the open world to find new objects to interact with to loot. You can rotate the camera freely about the battlefield to get a better angle on things, to get a different perspective if you're trying to plan something tactically. So, I mean, it does what it needs to do, but it looks good. It looks great. The animations are really great as well. There are execution animations that are done if a unit is killed with a critical strike. And keeping in with the low fantasy realism, they are kind of brutal, from knocking an enemy over with your great two-handed axe, just slamming into their chest with it while they're on the ground, punching your two-handed sword through their collarbone, then shoving it in multiple times with just more and more force as you get closer to the enemy, then ripping it up, beating them over the head with a mace. It's brutal. The sound design is good as well. It works for what it needs to do. The combat sounds are great. The skills look and sound great as you use them. Everything does what it needs to do. It's functional. It's not going to win any awards for best looking game or best sound design or anything like that, but that's not what's important here. What's important here is the overall package that Wartales does provide the player. In the end, I absolutely love the time I have so far spent in Wartales, and I do plan on spending more. If you enjoy a tactical turn-based RPG, managing survival mechanics, running a trade empire, delving through ancient tombs and solving puzzles, all in a low fantasy medieval setting, you'll absolutely love Wartales as well. I emphatically recommend this game to anyone a fan of the game, a fan of a game in this genre, as this game does have a little bit of everything, great tactical combat, and a large and deep world full of secrets to discover. And most of all, it's priced greatly as well. At its peak, at its most expensive, it is a $34.99 title on Steam. Currently, as of recording this, it is on sale for $24.99 as it hit the 1.0 launch. It does seem like a game that will probably drop in price a few times on discount, so just keep an eye out for that. But definitely for $34.99, if you enjoy an open sandbox tactical RPG with plenty of possibilities and plenty of stuff to do, this game is definitely for you, and something that, once again, I emphatically recommend.